In his blood, Tommy Cetnar.
It's all things sports, plus cop talk, current events, entertainment, and more.
Joined by America's favorite Jersey girl, DiLauri.
It's the King and the Cop.
Welcome. It's Friday, March 31st, and this is the King and the Cop. Thank God it's Friday. And thank you for tuning in and watching us. Tonight we got a special show. I'm Tommy Cetnar. DiLauri and Jim Leyritz are out at a charity event tonight. So I got two special guests tonight. And I guess you could say the secret's out. 45 has been trumped. Tonight, I got two guys that have been around the block a little bit. Charles Marino, supervisor, Secret Service, retired. Special guest on many of the networks, especially today. So I'm going to bring him in. I appreciate this late hour, him hanging with us after a long day. But Chuck has been with not only Secret Service, but Homeland Security. And Mark Skills, a frequent guest of the show, Stanford, great baseball player, played for the Marlins, and then has been just recently retired as the chief prosecution lead in Special Investigations Unit down in San Diego. And we'll be bringing Mark on, who's having a little technical difficulty. So we'll start with Chuck. Chuck, thanks for hanging out on this long day. I know you've been bouncing around on the circuit of major networks here, and appreciate you hanging with us for about 20 minutes or so. The story, this has been, it doesn't matter. We're bipartisan, us. We're like an umpire, the King and the Cop. We call it like we see it. Some people are saying this is an overreach. It's unprecedented that a former president has been indicted. And now the struggles begin. Is this the Secret Service in charge? Or are they letting up their man? I mean, I know from being around the block a little bit and dealing with a former vice president of the United States, you guys take incredible pride. It's not a party that you get involved with or a person. It's the respect of the office. How do you see this, and how do you look at this going Tuesday if, in fact, they want them to make the perp walk, as they say?
Yeah, well, first of all, Tommy, it's good to be with you, and thanks for having me. Definitely an unprecedented situation, right? To be sure. But regardless of the situation, there's something consistent, and that is the thorough protective methodology that the Secret Service brings to all these types of situations. This is not the first type of unprecedented event that they find themselves. So that consistency in the way they conduct their business is going to be very important. And, one thing that they're certainly not going to be involved in are the negotiations and the process that are worked out between the district attorney's office and the former president's legal team. But what they are doing is, look, they're going to be paying close attention to the intelligence based on the nature of what's going on here. They're going to keep their eyes on potential protests, any specific or credible threats that may evolve out of the increased media focus and the divisiveness that the Attorney General's decision has caused throughout the country. And then the other thing they're going to do is they're going to make sure that obviously the site in New York City, being the court building, is secure. And as you and I both know, the Secret Service has a great working relationship, not just with the NYPD, but all the other agencies within the New York City metropolitan area. So they'll work close with the NYPD to make sure that that site is secured. And then finally, you've got the protection detail that remains by the former president's side, no matter where he is. And nothing's going to change there come Tuesday. That detail will remain in close proximity, always have eyes on the former president, and, but like I said, not get involved in the process itself.
Chuck, I was a city cop in Newark, and then after I left, I had the honor, and I do mean honor, of leading the team of a former vice president of the United States, which meant I was in the car with him when he was going around, and, he was still referred to Mr. Vice President. And of course, I've been honored to been part of a couple things with the Bush family. You take great pride when you're with these gentlemen or gentle ladies, and you become close to them. And I don't know that it's ever become political, either one, because they are human beings like the rest of us. That being said, does the Secret Service send more men and women to ramp up this under the circumstances? I mean, the retired president or former president gets so many people. I'm not going to say, I'm not asking you to say, but do they ramp it up at this point now? I mean, this is unprecedented.
Yeah, good question. Again, the intelligence will play a pivotal role here, but let's look at the uniqueness of former President Trump. Once president is fresh out of office, so his level is going to be high. Then you add on top of that the fact that he's announced that he's going to run again, right? That this all plays into the staffing, and then of course these what I call the real life events that take place around the world and within the country, and the fact that he has now become the first former president to be indicted here is definitely factored in to what the staffing needs are. So all of that is paid attention to. Obviously, the specific intelligence that may arise out of this could also dictate it in terms of ramping it up or bringing it back down. But he's at a very high level. He's very well protected. I appreciate your comments because all of us, I had the opportunity to do a lot of protection in my career. And you're right. While I would not say it is a personal relationship, it's always a professional relationship. There is great pride taken in keeping that person and their families safe.
Correct. Yeah, you're never going to let anything, one of the experiences I had with the vice president was after 9/11, when we went to the first year anniversary down to Ground Zero. And it was and for reasons I won't mention his name, but that night he said, my wife wants to talk to you. And she said, because the first anniversary, as you know, we were a target again and there were ceremonies. And she said to me, I know that he was with you and your guys. You would make sure he gets back home. And I remember getting like a little choked up about that, because you do take great pride. Nothing's going to happen to this man under this watch. But I don't know that anybody has been so flamboyant as our 45th president of the United States, which must make it a little harder on you guys.
Well, Tommy, look, we find ourselves in unique times, as I like to say, right? And we've got to remember that the Secret Service is an apolitical organization. I never wore my beliefs one way or another on my sleeve. I went to work, I did the job, and that's what the men and women of the Secret Service do every day. The risky thing here is now with the 24-hour news cycle, all this divisiveness in the country. You've got now the unique situation of the district attorney's office and the former president's team. And, some have an inclination to want to pull the Secret Service into this political narrative. And while we can't prevent that from happening, guys like me that go on the news can tell you wholeheartedly that they are not going to become involved, nor have they ever, in the political dynamics of the people they protect's worlds. It's not their place. It's not their wheelhouse. It's not their expertise. And more importantly, it's not an area that agents want to be involved in, right? Tell us where you got to be, when you're going to go, and we'll make sure that it's the safest trip and site that it can be.
And we can't break that. A lot of things lately and politically have changed a little bit, but it's so good to hear you say that, because at the end of the day, this isn't about the person. It may be, but it's about the office and you guys protect and honor the office of the presidency. And listen, we can't afford, whether they're in office or when they come out of office, something terrible happened to them. It's almost his thing. He's going to go through this, but your job remains the same. It's almost like you have blinders on. about who he is or what maybe they claim that he did. As your job is just to protect himself, and that's needed. Here's Mark Skeels joining us. But Chuck, I would say this is this has got to be a little different for the detail. Would you say that? I mean, if it is the first time that it's ever happened, or do you just go back to what you're saying is business, and we're going to continue to protect them at any cost, and we're not going to take a position as to what the current events are?
No, it's exactly what it is. I mean, that's why that tried and true protective methodology, the process that the agents go through for each and every trip, whether it's for the president, the vice president, former presidents, Secretary of Homeland Security, I can go on and on and on with all of the people that the Secret Service are currently protecting. The number is staggering. It's that same process that they're going through because it ensures the overall safety and security. And look, you're right, Tommy. If anything were to happen to any of these people, there's national security implications with that. Obviously, right, the president and vice president that currently occupy office, definitely more of an impact. But this all touches national security should anything bad happen to any of them. And that's the way the details look at it.
Right. It's unacceptable. Mark Skeels, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Say hello to Chuck. Charles Marino, Secret Service. I know we took a little bit and you're having a little technical difficulty. So we put the slimmest picture I have of you up on for our viewers.
The miracles of Photoshop.
Chuck and I have been talking about, the Secret Service is steadfast in how they will continue to protect this president at any cost. And, whatever side you're on, Democrat or Republican, the Secret Service wears one hat, and that is only to care for the president and his family. That being said, you're professional. You were the chief of a special investigations unit in San Diego over 25 years. You're a highly decorated, very thoughtful lawyer, but also a very tough lawyer. What's your opinion now that you're retired on these charges? I mean, I can have that conversation with you and not put Chuck on the spot. What's your opinion on this? Are they overcharging at best? At worst, I mean, I don't even know what it's called, to be honest with you.
I mean, it's such an abuse of prosecutorial power that I can't hardly even believe it. I've spoken to many friends today, judges, defense attorneys, other prosecutors, most of whom are left-leaning, would probably be registered Democrats out here in the great state of California. And even they are, I think, shocked at the overreach by Alvin Bragg. If anybody marched into San Diego Superior Court to try and prosecute a case that was a misdemeanor offense from 7 years ago, they would be laughed out of the courtroom. I mean, it really shocks the conscience. It's the unfortunate application of using the justice system for political advantage. It's sad, no matter who the individual is or what party. It's really an overreach.
Chuck, Mark, of course, is looking at it through the eyes. We all have our own personal opinions. Mark can give his, I can give mine. You'll stay more along the lines of the business of the Secret Service, which I just really respect a lot, because I know a lot of men and women from the Secret Service, and I know the pride they take in this. But there's a part of it that, like I said, you're in the car with the president or the vice presidents, whether they're former or current. More when it's current, you're not in a need to know about. I'm sure you are in a need to know, but you don't get into personal talks. I found that more when they leave office, they let their guard down, and it's a little more personalities start to, how would you say, you start to become part of that family. You're with that family all the time. Will the sons of Mr. Trump and his daughter and his wife, will they elevate their security also through this process as a result of this?
Yeah. So again, paying attention to the intelligence, Tommy. Obviously, there's tools available should that be required. I'm not aware of any specific information out there that says that, this is about to be augmented, though I would not be surprised if it was. Typically, I will not go into great detail about that, but we know that, look, this is increased media scrutiny that has divided this country, probably more so. I think Mark has it right. I think you have a lot of people that you either suspect or are Democrats that are kind of shaking their heads at this and saying this is the wrong way to go. But, one thing I will talk about, and I talk about a lot, is the decision to go forth and put the full resources of the Attorney General's office for Manhattan behind this charge, while there's record-setting crime numbers in the city of New York. And we've seen what the defund police movement did to NYPD and other police departments in Democratic-run cities. The NYPD, it's a fact, is down about 5,000 police officers, retirements and resignations every day, recruiting down, not just with the NYPD, but again, other departments. And then you have the Attorney General that is selectively not enforcing violent crimes in the city. We're talking about, catch and release of rapists and murderers and people carrying illegal weapons. And this is the charge that he's sinking all of his resources into. If I live in Manhattan, I'm upset about this.
It's so well spoken about that I saw a cartoon today with a judge at his, on the bench, and it was a little cloud cartoon, and it was the president and his poor victim here, who was claiming we can't even call her a porn star anymore. She's an adult star. And Trump has a gun to her head, and the judge said, "No problem, Mr. President, you're free to go." Making fun of the Manhattan DA, like you could commit an aggravated assault, do whatever you want, and that will let you go. But here, we're going to put the perp walk on you, the walk of shame, the mug shot. And Mark, I ask you, like you're saying, it's no secret that California is a lot more, well, it's not a lot more liberal than New York, but the DA already won in this case, because all he really gives a crap about is getting his claim to fame. And he just got more than his 15 minutes in indicting a president, and it's never happened before. It's unprecedented.
Well, it's unprecedented on so many levels. For the former prosecutor to be so frustrated that they couldn't get him indicted, that he'd write a book, encouraging that, that still happened. It's incredible. And what's sad is the state of our civics and our politics. You have Nancy Pelosi. I had a tweet sent to me. I had to pull up her account just to double check it for myself. I couldn't hardly believe it. You have the former Speaker of the House tweeting out today that everyone has the right to a trial to prove innocence. I mean, I'm sorry for the Speaker of the House to say something that is so nonsensical and just anathema to the roots of our jurisprudence and the Constitution that she swore to pledge allegiance to say that, well, don't worry, you have a right to prove your innocence. No, you're innocent until proven guilty. And to just miss the standard, it just shows you how far we've gone from getting away from our bedrock principles and our core values. I don't know a single prosecutor that would have ever brought this case. It is stale beyond belief. A 7-year, misdemeanor is ridiculous. And especially when you've had all of the federal agencies weigh in on the fact that they don't believe there was any violation.
Right.
Campaign finance rules. In over 20 years as a state court prosecutor, I had never seen someone try to prove a federal crime in state court. It can't happen that way. It doesn't happen that way. So there are all kinds of legal hurdles that they're going to have to jump over, if they think that they're going to pursue this to a conviction. But the case is a mess.
You mentioned Nancy Pelosi, and again, this is just my personal opinion. when the president delivered the State of the Union and she stood behind him and ripped up his speech like a little 2-year-old. I didn't have much faith in her bipartisan opportunities to do what's right for our country. So she's just a hot mess. And Mark, but you're right. We've got away from our core values. Chuck, couple minutes to go with you because I appreciate your long day and you really given us your expertise. What do you think is going to be the end game here? Do you think he comes in Tuesday? They do a half-ass perp walk. They get him in there. I'm sure. I see the president's already bashing the judge because he was involved with one of Trump's people already. And then I'll follow up with Mark as far as the opportunity. Will they move the venue? I doubt it. But what do you think comes out of this? He comes in, he's back home, and they get him back home to Mar-a-Lago. I'd like to say that's a safe place, but we know what they did there also. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think again, this will be negotiated between the two teams. I think, this is essentially a surrender, right? I can't remember any time in my career where somebody has shown up and surrendered, where I've handcuffed them. You process them, you get them through the initial appearance, and then you're out. If we look at the standards in New York City, as you alluded to earlier, I think he turns around and walks back out. Now, politically, what do I think this does? I think Democrats are aware that this attorney general may have laid it all on the line and that it's got a very likely potential of backfiring.
Right.
And invigorating the former president's supporters and even people who were on the fence, or maybe even people that didn't like him, are going to say, you know what? This is really an extreme use of the judicial system, and we don't like it, and we don't like the deal that this guy's gotten. And you know what? For that fact, we're going to come out and support him. So I think it's going
to. They might have made him a martyr now, and now people that had wanted no part of him are going to say, "For the grace of God, you could be doing this to me. If you did it to a former president, why not me?" So you're right. They at this point, it might have tipped the scales of justice. Chuck, thank you. I really appreciate your expertise. I appreciate you coming on in such short notice. I know you had a full day, and I hope I can drop a dime on you later if we need to get you back on the show, because you were very helpful. And, this is a New Jersey show and it streams. There's a lot of people watching them from different states, but people are kind of, they do like to know what really goes on without us divulging some secret of the Secret Service or whatever. But the hardcore Republicans are worried. The Democrats, some of them are laughing. And like you said, there's a lot of independent people that didn't know where they were going now are just saying, wait a minute. So, Chuck, thank you. Stay safe, my brother. Hope to have you on in the future. Appreciate all your expertise.
Thanks, Tommy. Anytime. Anything for you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Mark, it's hard. Guys like this that dedicated their whole career, we were talking about, you get in a car with these people, you get to know their families, and also, although there's a Chinese wall up between you as far as what you can hear and what you can know, you can't tell me that you can't be on a detail for 5-10 years that you don't become fond of these people, politics aside. And it'll be interesting. I know if I'm that Secret Service guy, I'm almost like a screw you to everybody. This is my guy, and you're not handcuffing him. And I could see some old school guys getting really, really edgy with this whole situation.
Yeah, it's natural. I always think of that movie Aaron Brockovich when he takes away all her cases and he says it's not personal. And she's like, it's not personal. It's my time. It's my energy. It's my, I miss family events to do this. Of course, it becomes personal. I respect, the professionalism of the men and women that do that job and the sacrifices they make. But yeah, it's human, to want to feel like, hey, I want to stick up for this individual. And it's just not a good day. I mean, back on the prosecutor side, you're during voir dire, you try and ferret out people that may have a bias against the system. I guarantee you, there are millions of Americans today that if they're sitting with a jury notice, when they go to that next jury trial and they're being asked questions, they're sitting there going, you know what? I'm going to stick it to the DA because I'm frustrated with the system. It's wrong what happened, and they carry that bias into the jury room. It's not a good day. It's a total abuse of prosecutorial discretion. This case should have never gotten off the ground. And they're glad handing themselves right now in that Manhattan DA's office, not understanding the damage they did to prosecutors across this country by bringing such a preposterous case for political reasons only.
Right. Mark, can you imagine if they ever handcuffed one of our presidents, that snapshot all over the world? I mean, it's bad enough people are laughing at us right now. This is really, after 9/11, I mentioned before, what we were together, everybody was one. We were red, white, and blue. We weren't red, we weren't blue. We were red, white, and blue. We're going so far down these hellholes. It's unbelievable. And I'm not going to sit here and say I agree with everything President Trump has done in his career. I'm not going to say that President Biden is the worst guy in the world. I think they all get into office and try to do the right thing. And I think the average citizen, which we all are, does not understand the pressure. There's only so many men and women who served as president or vice presidents. But we've been around them a little bit, and you befriend them if you're lucky enough. And this is heartbreaking in a sense. That's the word I'm using. It's like heartbreaking. I don't care what party he was from or she was from. If it's our president, what the hell are you doing? Did he stick a gun in somebody's mouth? Did he really commit an incredible crime? Are you kidding me? What about President Clinton when he perjured himself in office with Monica Lewinsky? What happened there? What's the difference here?
Well, I heard one political commentator today make a point that he said, well, they're trying to bootstrap in a federal, election campaign allegation that he had attributed those hush payments as legal fees. And this commentator said, there is someone else who had $1 million expenditure that they designated as legal fees, and that was Hillary Clinton. In the same year, in 2016, for the now debunked Steele dossier that she ferreted through outside counsel to run it through as a legal expense when it was actually just a political hit job. So it feeds into the narrative that people across the country start to go, you know what? There's two systems here. There's two systems of justice, and that just hurts everybody. And to your point, somebody will leak a photo of him being fingerprinted, or someone will leak a photo of, God forbid, he gets handcuffed. And they'll say, hey, nobody's above the law. Everybody has to be treated the same. But if nobody's above the law,
that's a horse crap statement when I hear that, because, we all put our pants on the same way. This guy was a former president of the United States. So I'm sorry, we don't all get treated the same. There's, like Chuck articulated, there are security concerns when we act like this. It's plain and simple. He's earned that right unless he's done something treacherous to another human being or the legal system. Is this really treacherous? Really? Give me a break. Oh, man. Mark, it's Friday. Enough being said. I just had a handsome guy with an Arkansas hat pop up on the screen. So when I go for the last half hour and we're going to talk baseball and family, may I introduce Mr. Andrew Skeels, the brother of Mr. Mark Skeels. You want to say hello?
What's happening down there?
Well, I'll tell you what's happening down there. We just had a great conversation with Charles Marino, former Secret Service guy. I don't know if you were listening. I know and I'm not being sarcastic, a well-rounded guy, although 3-time World Series champion and been in baseball majority of your adult life. I will tell you one thing. It's obvious you know how to join a show, and your brother doesn't. So I had to put the slimmest picture of him up because he couldn't get on.
Yeah, well, I'm not as rounded as he is.
I'm going to ask you both something. It's opening day weekend. Let's get out of the political world right now because you two bring some twist. Mark, unbelievable, successful lawyer. Before that, he was a catcher at Stanford University and then went on to play for the Marlins system. And Andy, you're almost like a co-host, All-American, Hall of Famer out of Arkansas, went on and spent many roles playing and then ended up winning 3 World Series rings with the Giants in that organization. And your brother David, an attorney, who I should have got on tonight, and hopefully he would have figured out how to get on, also played in the MLB system. Guys, yesterday was opening day. This is opening day weekend. Andy, you first. What was it like a kid? Did you have your favorite uniform, your favorite hat? Did you have everything laid out? You know, we didn't have the coverage we have now back when we were kids, but you guys experienced a lot of opening days. You still get a chill up your spine when you watch it?
Yeah, opening day is great. I mean, everybody starts at 0 and there's hope springs eternal, and that's still crisp in the air and it's time to get going. So as a little kid, you couldn't wait, and the TV and all the media and all that stuff wasn't like it was. So in some ways it was mythical, the beginning of a new season and who's going to win, and you got your favorite teams and you're rooting for them. And then as you get older and you get into the game, it's a great day because you're finally out of spring training. You've been waiting all winter for this day, and it's time to get down to business and commence to fighting. So it's a great day all the way around for fans, for players, for coaches, for everybody involved.
Anybody that watches the show or has listened to us on the Tampa radio station a few months ago knows that the Skeels brothers are like my West Coast blood brothers. Mark, you and I, we owned a piece of the Newark Bears, and you were the general manager. And I'm serious when I say this. You recruited not only Hall of Fame manager Tim Raines to be our manager, and we had Mike Torres and Ron Karkovice and 21 major league players. And Mark, we got credit for having one of the, by far, the best opening days ever in minor league history. But the New York Times said it was better than Mets and Yankees because we had General Colin Powell, God rest his soul, throughout the first pitch, and Patti LaBelle sing the national anthem. And we got coverage like no other. And I remember saying to you that day, during the national anthem, I was choked up and chills like you can't believe. That was one of our better days. Would you admit that?
That was a great day. And I remember Rock, Tim Raines, chuckling like, wow, this was quite a show. And that's a guy coming from, playing days with the Yankees. It was tremendous excitement. Opening day has always kind of held that sense of rebirth in our country. And unfortunately, as a segue from what we were talking about just a moment ago, you look forward to the president coming out and throwing out the opening pitch and opening day, and just the way that the game is interwoven into our, national story. It's, we just look forward to those moments. But yeah, that was a Newark Bears. That was a phenomenal opening day.
As I sit in my studio to the both of you, Robin, my wife, gave me this beautiful gift. It was one of my favorite moments, and I know it was to both of you too. George Bush throwing the first pitch out at the Yankee game after 9/11. It's in the middle of my room here because he had more balls than anybody. The Secret Service guy was dressed up as an umpire. I should ask Chuck about that. And George Bush goes out and throws a P right down the middle. And nobody was a Democrat or a Republican that night. It was all about the President of the United States, basically going on that mound, knowing that he was a target, and basically giving a finger to the rest of the world from the United States saying, I'm here. I'm right here on the middle of the mound in the Bronx. Come and get me. And the place went crazy. To your point, Mark, Mr. Biden must have missed opening day. Or I don't even know, political aside, I don't know if he would even know how to walk out to the mound, this poor guy. But that being said, Andy, what was your favorite opening day? Giants, you grew up a Dodger fan, but the Giants, you raised all these superstars that won the World Series. I joined you out in the desert for a minor league opening day, where if you remember, I forget what the astronauts from Apollo 11, They flew that jet that came over home plate and went straight up at what they call sonic speed, and we almost all wet our pants because we didn't even see it coming. It was so fast. But again, the chills and like you said, a new start. That being said, Mr. Judge, you were in the Yankee organization, decided to come up as the captain first at bat and smoke one against your Giants over center field. And it looks like the Yankees are off and running. Who's your pick, brother? Who's your pick this year? Who's your favorite team that you think could be in the World Series?
Well, I think it's like anything. It's going to, in the American League, you got the Yankees who are always formidable. You got the Astros who are, riding a pretty good curve. And you got Toronto really in that same mix. So I think you put a hula hoop around them and you check where they are at the break. I think in the National League, Padres and Phillies are certainly the class of the National League at this point. I think Atlanta still has a lot to say about what happens there, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, that's kind of the fun of the game. And touching on one thing, I was in the stadium when George Bush threw out that first pitch.
I know,
and I can tell you personally, it was unbelievable. You had grown men crying.
Yep.
And it's kind of the power of the game. Mark referenced it. It's so interwoven into our national story. I think anybody who watches that, and like you said, there are no Democrats and no Republicans that day. I can tell you for sure. But back to opening day, it's a great day, and it promises all the things that you're hoping for, and time will tell.
Mark, San Diego's no longer the redheaded stepchild, if you will. They got to be the favorite out there in California. I saw something the other day that just made me laugh. The Angels and MLB actually posted that they won had the best record in spring training. Really? Really? Is that what you're hanging your hat on? I mean, I love my man Trout, and I want to watch him. I want to see him in the playoffs. Jersey guy. But Mark, what are your office oversees the San Diego ballpark? Temperature different the last 2 years there?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a lot of excitement. In fact, I'm sitting just a few feet from Petco Park right now, and the fan base here in San Diego is looking for a longer run into the playoffs this year, and the lineup is loaded. I mean, they have a tremendous offensive potential, and I'm sure Bob Melvin will be excited to fill out that lineup card every day. So yeah, the fans out here are excited, but you always got to still get up for your rivals like the Dodgers and the Giants, and then hopefully you're at the top of the leaderboard at the end. But it's about getting hot at the end, which is what's so cool about the season. Yeah, it's fun to get out of the gates and put a few games in between you and whoever's in second place. But at the end of the year, it's who's healthy, who's playing well, and who's left on the field. But San Diego is definitely excited about the club this year.
I'm going to ask you both the same question. You first, Andy. Here in New Jersey, we've had the coming of the newest and greatest next Derek Jeter, and the media's going crazy. And our man Volpe is the new shortstop for the New York Yankees. Young kid that played at Del Barton High School here, a few miles away from Robin and I, are a household name. Great kid. Great family man. I laugh because he chose the number 11. Brett Gardner wore number 11, the last one. But the last time, and I know he's friends with you, Andy, last number 11 that played shortstop was Fred the Chicken Stanley. So I laughed at that. But when we were growing up, and I know Stanley was a part of the Giants organization. But more importantly, my question to you both is, what's that moment where you picked up the phone? Because this kid said it's all about family, and he proves it over and over. Whether he's like Jimmy Leyritz said the other night, please stop comparing him to Jeter and thinking he's next Jeter. We're talking about one of the greatest of all time. It's like every time back in the day they used to say this is the next Mickey Mantle. That was the curse for everybody. But what was that call when you called mom and dad and said, guess what? I'm the Yankees signed me, or I'm leaving the Padres and I got traded, or join me. Like I remember as a coach where you were in the dugout in Dodger Stadium and there was Mark and your whole family, your mom. What's that moment like when it's just between you and the family?
Well, I can tell you that when I debuted in Dodger Stadium, to see my family there, that was the greatest day of my career, and it's not even close. Having my mom there and both my brothers was unbelievable. So, but I'll tell you a funny story. When I got drafted,
appreciate, right, Ann? It's that thrill. You remember the old show, Why Will Sports, the agony in defeat and the thrill of victory. That's when it's your family, when they looked at you and they're the first one. Little Maxie, my grandson, is down in South Carolina. His father's the head coach of varsity high school program up here, and they're down in South Carolina for spring training. And he's got full uniform garb on with the big bongo bat, walking around at 3 years old. I call him the 2038 first round pick in MLB. But your mom and dad, that's what they remember. That's what they're looking at. They're still seeing that little boy. No greater gift you could give them, correct? After everything they did for you?
Well, family's everything. And you realize pretty quickly that they're the ones, because baseball's for most is a very uneven ladder getting anywhere. They're the ones that always pulled for you. They're the ones that were always rooting for you. They're the ones who have been there forever. And so it's not even so much about you're happy for yourself. You're happy for them that they got a chance to be there, because that's the true joy of accomplishing anything, worthwhile, is that you can have the people around you that you love and cherish to share it with you.
Mark, before I get to you, I want to share a tradition. Obviously I was in the law enforcement world, great grandfather, dad, 100 years, all that. And me and my dad and brother were close. And, I went on to be a part owner of the Newark Bears and GM, and experienced it with Andy. Andy, you were, when I was GM, our first pitching coach. I was on the phone with Victor Rojas today. We were his father, Cookie Rojas, his family. We talked off the air about how special it was. But Mark, you, again, great athlete, Stanford University, catcher, caught the great pitcher Mike Mussina, who went on to have an incredible career, former Yankee and Oriole. And what was it like for you? Like, I know how much you love your brothers, and I know how proud you are, because I've been honored to be part of some of the things that we did together to go celebrate Andy or watch Andy. What was it like for you, though, when you were, damn, my brother's doing this and I'm in the Marlins organization? Hey, mom, dad. I mean, what family has three brothers calling them home to mom and dad about being in the MLB? What was it like for you, Mark? What was your favorite moment? And I know you're going to start by saying, looking through the eyes, you were so proud of Andy, but what were your favorite moments?
Well, actually, that was definitely one of them. That day at Dodger Stadium, friends and family were there, and I remember we walked our mother down to the rail, me and my younger brother David, and said, "Hey, Mom, let's take a picture." And she whispered in our ear, she goes, "Oh, this would be so sweet if Andy was here." And she had no idea. She hadn't put it together, and we're like, "Well, maybe we can arrange something." And next thing you know, Andy's right behind her, and the tears flowed out. But what I also remember about that moment was, I turned back to the stands where our friends and family were kind of watching us, and my son Rhett, who is very non-emotional usually, he's crying. Like, he could see the love we had for each other and how happy we were for our mother to be able to enjoy that. People used to always joke, they say, "Wow, three of you, playing professional baseball, your dad must have been a great player." We're like, no, he came from New Zealand. He'd never played baseball growing up. I think we got it from our mother's side. And, her father was a big baseball fan. So, I used to really appreciate when we were all playing, thinking, wow, I never met my mom's father. He passed away before I was born. But just thinking, you know what, I bet he's getting a real big kick up there, watching his three grandsons, run around and play professional baseball. That was something that I felt regularly and got a big kick out of.
You know, Andy was on the show last week, and he was, of course, during the World Baseball Classic, the last time he was the manager, as you obviously know, and he sent me a picture of the three of you representing New Zealand, which I get choked up with this kind of stuff because in the cop world, I like to tell this story. My brother was up to be promoted as the deputy superintendent of state police, and then went on and still is the current head superintendent of Port Authority, New York, New Jersey Police Department. And my brother had called me and told me what was happening. And he said, but don't say anything to Dad. I'm going to call him. Well, my father called me and he said, hey, don't say anything, but we got made. And I said, what's this we got made stuff? And he said, your brother, he got promoted. I said, well, how's that we got made? I said, what are we, the organized crime family? We got made. And he said, it's all, Eddie trumped everybody at that point, for no better word. And he was so proud. And, passed away 6 years ago, but was so proud of my brother, what he accomplished. I can't imagine your dad. And I remember meeting your dad when he came to Newark Bear Stadium, but your parents must have just been beside themselves. And Mark, you went on to have an incredible career and still have a career as an attorney. You missed the game. Do we still have the dream? Take the East Coast brother here and get the two West Coast brothers? We got to get back in the game full time. I mean, Andy's probably saying, please be quiet. I had enough. I've been doing 30 years. But is it still your passion, baseball, if you could choose any job?
Oh, it is. One of my coworkers has a 7-year-old son who is playing Little League this year. And she said, hey, any chance you want to come out and, and I said, yeah. I said, and you get a kick out of just being around the field, seeing the little kids run around and remembering what it was like to grow up. Yeah, where we grew up in Thousand Oaks, there was a field right down the street. We literally spent every day there and all day on Saturday. It was an unbelievable time. It was a great life. My dad was a huge volunteer, working with the umpires and helping things with the league. So when Andy managed, Team New Zealand in the World Baseball Classic, that was a tremendous moment for the family. Just thinking about how proud my dad would have been.
Hey, Andy, this is a funny story, and there's an old saying, once a Newark Bear, always a Newark Bear, right? So Newark Bear you were, and Skilsey was the GM there, obviously. But I have a funny story about that. On opening day, we played, Mark, if I'm correct, 141 games, around that, 142, which is a lot for the minor leagues, and it's an independent league. Make a long story short, we had a fabulous partner and basically funded us, but didn't know much about baseball. So, Mark, I have this great picture hanging on my walls also of our first game as owners and running the show with Newark Bears, and we're standing in Lancaster, and it's a great picture of us. And we wind up, Gary would say, how do you think we can go undefeated? Mark signed 21 major undefeated, like we're going to go 140, like even in Little League, you're going to do it. And we were so favored. And I think out of the first 30 games, we were 27-3, but we got smoked 15-3 our first game in Lancaster. And Mark looked at me and Gary and said, how's 141-1 sound? We had so much fun, Mark, And Andy, my long-winded question, you missed the camaraderie of being in the game. Your whole adult life has been baseball.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, there's all kinds of things to love about the game. I mean, I think for everyone in my family, my brothers and I, we grew up on it. We ate it. We lived it. And so it never goes away. And it's always there. And the chance to get out on the grass and in the stadium and all of that is great. I mean, it's like any other job. If you're playing, there are things about it that you're okay stepping away from, but the game, the passion, and it's the competition. I mean, right. Really, when it comes down to it, it's how do you figure out how to beat somebody? And I think that certainly drove me. I know it drove Mark, and I know it drove David. So I think that doesn't ever go away, and it's part of who you are. And in the right situation, I'd love to go back to baseball. So we'll see if that happens.
It will happen because you're needed. You were the winningest minor league manager. I think you still are in history over a 5-year period. I believe I remember. But Mark, Andy's
7,
right.
but who's
7.
counting?
See, I cheated him. And Mark, even for myself as a cop, that every night you went out there and your life was in danger, and it was no picnic in Newark. But I say to people, it was the greatest time of my life. It was that will to win. We had to beat the bad guy. And it was that will. You took that same passion from the ballpark into the legal world. You were one of the top prosecutors, and you fought for justice every day. Do you think your training as an athlete? I know I was blessed enough to be okay. I'm a better golfer than your brother here, but I had that will to win.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I had to get that in there. That will to win. Is that how you feel? You think that helped you? Forget Stanford, forget all that. Was it that grind and that passion to win that came from the diamond?
Yeah. So trial work is something where that instinct to want to be more prepared, to be more ready, and to outperform the team on the other side certainly motivates you. I mean, as a prosecutor, it's about doing the right thing and having the ethics and integrity and perspective to only move forward the right cases. But once you're starting the trial and you're getting to talk to the jury, and certainly I think it helps to have a competitive spirit. The one whose kid I just mentioned, I've been helping coach. She was a tremendous prosecutor. She was a former Division I soccer standout, and I think we talk about that sometimes, that competitive spirit, and the other things you learn, teamwork, don't get down on yourself, and perseverance and all the rest. It certainly translates over. And I gotta say, hearing Andy talk and you talk and thinking about the Newark Bears, you can't help but think about Tony Ferrara. And when you talk about how being excited to go to the ballpark every day, there was a guy that he had a storied history, from movies with Frank Sinatra to running around with the Yankees. But I remember one of the first days at Riverfront Stadium there in Newark, and we were talking about some of the greats that you were smart enough to put up on the wall, people that played for the Bears or the Eagles, and seeing the picture of Monty Irvin and being like, wow, Monty Irvin played here. That's incredible. And he's like, oh, let me call him. And he literally pulls out the George Costanza phone book and scrolls through to Monty Irvin and calls him and puts him on the line and says, here, say hi to our new GM, Mark Steele. Like, that was a great moment. But that's what was the beauty of baseball. Like, you could, you have reverence for the people who played before you. And you're excited about the prospects, and who's going to be playing in the future. But in the middle there's people like Tony Ferrara that tied both ends together, and really made it fun to be around the ballpark.
I'm talking about the little things I saved through the years, and I wasn't that kind of guy. But one of the greatest gifts I ever have, and that's also here with me, is after that conversation, a few weeks later, in a box came a glove and a hat, Newark Eagles hat, and a glove that he had used, and said, thank you for not forgetting who the Eagles were. Because if you remember the great closer from the Red Sox, Keith Folk, he used to break my chops because I put Bears on one side, Eagles. So the New York Post did a bit of article on him that he was playing with us after winning the World Series with the Red Sox. And he said, yeah, I just can't figure out where I am. I'm an Eagle Bear. It's the first time I But people, Mark, to your point, we wanted to show the respect. Monty Irvin, Larry Doby, all these great guys came through the city of Newark. Back in the day, Yogi Berra was a Newark Bear. And the Newark Bears were like, they were on the major league level. They were so good back in the day. A couple minutes left. Andy, when you're part of the reason we got Tim Raines as our manager, as a Hall of Famer. He went on to be in the Hall of Fame, and Mark, one of the best times we ever had, we went up as his guest and watched him get inducted. You and Timmy spent a lot of time. Timmy as a manager, you as his bench coach, and I believe it was the Expos, right? Or Washington?
Yeah.
Washington.
No, Expos.
Thank God Rock got in the Hall of Fame. What do you think, real quick, about this 2 times over, 3rd time's a balk, or you have to pick the guy off? Do you think it brings the stolen base game back into play?
Well, I think it definitely brings it into play. I think Rock would probably have 250 stolen bases a year
Right.
if he was playing. Certain people in Major League Baseball are obsessed with this idea that if I can shave 8 minutes off the time clock, that we'll get more fans. I just don't believe it. I'm more of a traditionalist, but it really changes the strategy behind people who can run. So I think obviously that's going to come into focus quite clearly. You mentioned Volpe, and right out of the gate, boom, stolen base.
Right.
And it really wasn't even close. So I think some of those rule changes, if they're intended to get more action in the game, okay, maybe. But I have a tendency to err on the side of what's traditional.
And
I feel cheated because I was a 4-tool player, but if I could use my speed on the base pass to get a game, especially with a larger base, I mean, there's no telling how much terror I could rip up on the base.
Listen,
didn't you get pinch run for in a walk?
Listen, the only thing
from home plate to first base
run into was the buffet table after the game. Let's cut the nonsense.
Yeah.
That being said, he could throw and he could hit. Listen, guys, it's always a pleasure and an honor to have you both on. Mark, thanks for the expertise about the president, President Trump. Andy, you're always on with me. I love it. We have a lot of laughs. I find myself sometimes drifting as if we're not doing a show and we're just breaking balls between us. But always a good time to have you on. Andy, thanks for coming on at last minute. Mark, know you had a long day, so thank you also. Figure out, my friend, have one of the secretaries or your co-partners help you how to get on TV so we can see your handsome face.
It's my tinfoil hat, I think, is throwing off the reception.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Tommy.
In closing tonight, I want to say shout out to one of my favorite guys in the Newark Police Department. Kevin Schneider retired after 42 years. Deputy Chief Kevin Schneider, cop's cop. We worked together in narcotics. Couldn't have a better man. A lot of laughs, a lot of fun times. Kevin, Godspeed, brother. I wish you all the best. You made a difference in the Newark Police Department. Robin and Jimmy will be back with me on Monday. Thanks for watching. Have a safe weekend. Have a great weekend. The King and the Cop. Appreciate you looking in.